Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you everyone for joining us again for day 2 of Sidh Gosti. We're excited to start day 2, and we hope you had some rest and had some time to really internally process all the information and the reflective elements of yesterday's talk on Ekara Nam. Today's conversation and sessions are going to be around Bani. And the title of today's session is Bani Wisdom Theme Language. Today we're going to explore what sorts of Sikhi ideas the Gurus were communicating to us. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Satprit Kaur and Surender Pal Singh, and they will go over today's hukum and fly right into our presentation for today.
Again, thank you, Anu, for bringing those beautiful memories back to the mind, because I remember 2014 was the time when Sidh actually came to Canada, Vancouver. Before that, we used to have in San Antonio, US. So, just like yesterday, before we start this session, we will have a hukum reflection. We will be reflecting on the hukum that came from Harmandir Sahib, Amritsar today. So many people might be wondering, why do we take take reflections from the hukum that from Sri Harmandir? Well, many people have prakash of the Granth Sahib at home, and they take a personal hukum from there. But we often reflect on the hukum, that comes from Harmandir Sahib, since millions of Sikhs worldwide, every day look forward to it and connect with it. So in a way, it's a collective reflection, and it's collective reflection that brings us together and brings us closer as a community. So today's hukum, which is right in front of you on the slide, which is from Harmandir Sahib, is in Rag Jatsri by the 5th Mahal, which is Guru Arjan Sahib, and it is revealed in the chant form, which is accompanied by sloks as well. So briefly, I would want to go through the poetic genres. There are sloks and chants, so that you have an idea what they are. The sloks are literally, songs of praise, which are mostly in the form of a couplet in the Granth Sahib. And chants, on the other hand, is a genre of compositions, that typically has 4 stanzas within the Granth Sahib, but at some places they also range from, they actually go up to 5 to 10 stanzas. Again, each stanza in a chant may vary from, its length also varies. It varies from 4 to 6 lines. And the chant that we are covering today has 4 stanzas, and each stanza is 6 lines long. I'm not able to show you the entire stanza for the lack of space, and I've also highlighted a few lines that we will focus on for our reflection today. So as I just mentioned, each stanza is also accompanied by 1 slok that you can see on the screen. So there are in all 4 sloks and 4 chants in today's. There is another instruction given in the title of the Shabads, if you can notice, which states the Kar, Jatsri Mahala Panjwa, Kar Duja, the number of the chant, the number of the Kar. So there are up to 17 Kars mentioned in the Guru Granth Sahib, and musicologists have different interpretations of this term. Some scholars, ascribe Kar to tal or beat in which that composition is to be sung. In other words, Kar binds a composition to its meter. The other view is that they have something to do, with the rag, the musical mode. They, in a way, describe the feature of the rag. So the research is still on the exact purpose of the Kar, but still I wanted to mention that for your benefit information. So with that, we will move on to the Hukum reflection itself. Well, the first slok opens, so when I look at the Hukum today, before I actually start, it reminded me of the Hukum yesterday, where the second stanza of the Shabad addressed Akal Purkh and said that, it is only through your grace that an individual is able to get rid of their attachment and pride. Tumri kripa te moh maan chhuta, binas jaye rumai. So that was such a beautiful reminder. And the same theme is actually also running through these chants as well. These chants also kind of, take us on the same journey, the human quest for, finding freedom from bondages of life, which may be either familial or material in nature. So the first slok, seeks the sanctuary of Akal Purkh to break away, in order to, break that bondage, and starts the chant by praying that Yo jano ho tyo rakh, har prabh teriya, save me any which way you can, whether I'm good or bad, I'm still yours. So with this chant, the chant basically sets the tone for the rest of the chants. It says that, it doesn't matter whether I'm good or bad, how I'm qualified or how I'm looked at, from any standard of life, I still have only you, the Akal Purkh, to repose my faith in and fall back on in times of need. I may have, and I actually have countless demerits, and I am engrossed in the attachment of the terrible, terrible material world. I can be saved or freed only by your grace. Moho magan bikral maya, bikral, terrible maya, the material world that pulls us away from our first love, which is Akal Purkh. To prasadi kulliye. It's only through your grace that I can be saved from this strong pull of moho, of attachment, of staying magan, engrossed in the Bikral Maya, the terrible Maya, the material world. The Guru says, we have infinite shortcomings and we make infinite mistakes. And Jio Jano Teora Kharprab, but no, please save us, even though we make mistakes. So in the later in the chant, Guru Sahib brings us to a very important point that we make certain mistakes deliberately. Some mistakes we make unknowingly. There are others that we make deliberately, not knowing that Prabhu near Hute Nereya, that Akal Purkh is actually nearer than we can even think, nearer than near. So urging us to think twice before we assume that nobody is looking and we can indulge in any sort of wrongdoing. So it's a question. It's also a way of gently nudging us to live a life of integrity. That's how you seek sanctuary in the house of Guru, and that's when your actual journey starts towards breaking free of the bondage of material world. So next slok, that is also right there. No, Satprit, you have to go back. Yeah, slok 2 and chant 2. The second chant, moves the conversation to the next level once the being, has been made aware of their wrongdoings and asked to take refuge in Akal Purkh. It is reminded that, do not be fooled by your worldly possessions. You might feel proud of it, and you might feel that your world relationships are the ones that you can rely on. Know that in the time of need, the only place to seek help is Akal Purkh. The slok teaches us that it teaches us the way actually to seek refuge. It says, right in the beginning, Tajman moho vikar duja, ek syon liv laiye. Give up pride and attachment, moho, of your worldly possessions and relationships, and connect your consciousness to one Akal Purkh. And I cannot stress enough on this, verbiage, this usage of one versus Duja, second in the Gurbani. This is a recurring theme, something that keeps reappearing in Gurbani, where the worldly love is symbolized or represented through second love. How, avra sad, other taste, duja sad, ya duja pao, second love, in contrast to the first love, the one love, the absolute love that we are supposed to, develop in ourselves of divine. So same vocabulary is being used here as well. Ajaman, give up more, pride and attachment, and vikar, and your vices, you can say, your all the actions that we take under the influence of the natural human nature, uh, all those, give up all those, which are essentially a symptom of our second love, duja bhav. And then what should you do? Attach your consciousness, connect your consciousness to one love of Akal Purkh. Give up your ego and submit to the master with body and mind. Arp man tan prabhu aaga, aap sagal mitaiye. Erase your ego, your own self, your understanding of your own self, or your sense of self. Give it up, submit to the how one merges with the eternal Ram, something that we covered in detail yesterday, and will continue to do so today and in the later sections. So with that, we move to the third and fourth chant. Satprit, next slide. Thank you. So next, the third chant reminds the wavering mind, which is looking for support from small things, that only have a short life, that the only support of mind or the being which is everlasting and permanent, the only lasting companion of the being is actually Akal Purkh, who will always stand by it when everyone has given up and abandoned it. Sathira Prabhu Ek, there is only one master who is the true companion. Again, if you notice, ek to dusra ka are juxtaposed. So you'll see this dynamic playing out in Sahib very often. Ek versus second, more. Satyada Prabhu Ek, there's only one master. Dusra nahi, there's none other. Since the all-pervading Akal Purkh is the only capable giver, word Sarabdata appears later here. Who is present everywhere and at all times. This is a good place to remember that whatever I see around is actually nothing but Akal Purkh, and there's no one else other than the all-pervading Akal Purkh. Things for what they are, which is the divine, the source of all happiness. Sukha hai gami. Another phrase that is later. The Guru ends this stanza by stating that the one who actually takes the support of Akal Purkh and on whom the divine bestows grace receives now. Again, it appeared yesterday, it will appear today, it will appear tomorrow as well. The ultimate jewel of life. With that, we move to the last month of today's poem. Slok chitta jichitvya somam paya. What I had dreamt of, wanted, I found that once I, achieved that union. Nanak naam te aaye, sukh savaya. All happiness that one can think of is received once I thought about, when I remembered Naam. So the last chant essentially describes the state of free mind, the mind which is now free, which has broken free of all bondages because of connecting with Naam and developing love for the one, the first love, the absolute, which one attains once Naam has been received, and the individual becomes one with the Akal Purkh. Ab man chhoot gaya, sadhu sang mile. Now the mind has become free of all bondages. It has been released from them. Chut gaya. Once it made the eternal wisdom of the Shabad its permanent companion. And by making wisdom its permanent companion, the life became wisdom oriented. Gurmukh, a term, an idea that is occurring in the as well, which you'll cover later. So when the mind, learned to stay absorbed in Naam, all other worldly loves vanished, and the individual self became one with the divine light, and the union happened. Idea that is the focus of the current Bani as well, how to achieve yoga or union with the ultimate reality, right? So when that happened, all anxieties of life vanished and the mind became cool and calm. Harinam Simrat Mite Kilvik Buji Takt, fire of anxiety was extinguished, was put out, and one became satiated. And the last few closing lines, which are not here on your screen, are so warm, and that even though they are not written here in front of you, I'll just read them for you. Gah puja line daya kine apne karmanya. The divine gave hand and made me their own. Apne karmanya, la ankalai. Divine held me, deep in embrace. Harimilai janam marna dukh jale. All the pains that are associated with life, the symbolic idea of transmigration that appears. So there's a interplay of that verbiage here as well. That all the pains that are associated with the life were removed. In one Nanak, Nanak prays, Dayatari, thus divine, the beloved, my permanent companion, had on me, Meline, Ikpale, within a second, within an instant, I was united. So, and that's the message of the Satprit. Do you like to add to it?
Sure. So for me, as I was reading the Hukamnama, I think the overwhelming feeling that I got was like, it's gonna be okay. Like, Ikwanka, like Waiguru's got your back. Like, it's all good. It's gonna be okay. And like throughout each of these chants, and just this idea and this theme of like, I can come as I am, and be who I can come as I am, and I'm still yours, Waiguru. Like, and you can kind of see that in the first chant right there, but it continues throughout the other chants as well. Like, I'm imperfect, I mess up, I make mistakes, but like Waiguru, you're compassionate and can still, like, you still have my back, which I think is a really powerful idea, and at least is a little bit relieving to me personally. And so we wanted to give you a little bit of time to like reflect on the Hukamnama a little bit and think about it for yourself. So I'm going to put a question in the chat and we'd love to see some of your responses. So one of the things that's really important in this part is this idea of Guru Sahib, or Waiguru having your back, always being there, being a support. So what I'd love for all of you to do is think about someone in your life who accepts you as you are. And I want you to think about, like, what does that make you feel like? And I'm typing that in the chat as well. So what does that feel like? That feeling of being accepted for who you are. So think about someone who fits that description. And then why do you think that feeling is important? Nice. I'm seeing some great responses in the chat so far. So my father, and it feels like I can conquer the world. You can like take on anything. It empowers me and creates this cushion that even if I fall, he will still love me. Such a beautiful feeling. I love it. And then my mother and father, it's a feeling of belonging to somewhere and to someone when no one else will. So a feeling of comfort. I love it. And I see another person said parents, feeling kind of humble and loved, and a sense of belonging and comfort. Feeling unconditional love helps me be reflective and act with clarity rather than defensiveness. my mother, acceptance, feeling confident, have your own a set of expectations rather than trying to meet others. My mother, because of love and acceptance. Zephyr, you can be your true self. So all of these, okay, first of all, thank you all so much for responding. And I love these responses that are coming in. I hear someone privately said a feeling of like coming home. And without this feeling, you wouldn't have a sense of belonging. Exactly. So like, I think about that feeling and then I like transfer it. And when I'm thinking about this hukamnama, this sense of like, oh, like, Waheguru's got my back. It's fine. Like, I am accepted as I am. Like, the sense of comfort and belonging and empowerment, which I think is really powerful. And so that's one reason why this hukamnama was so powerful to me personally. Thank you all so very much for sharing your responses. Surender Pal, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we're good. We can probably start.
Perfect. Okay, with that, welcome to our session today. So today we will be talking about the Bani of Sidh Gosti, particularly with a focus on wisdom, theme, and language. Today's session will be facilitated by Surender Pal Singh and myself, Satprit Kaur. We also want to acknowledge Kiran Kaur, who helped us with the development of this session and was unfortunately unable to join us today. However, in today's session, we will begin with an introduction to Sidh Gosti and what is Yoga. And then we will consider what are some of the major themes that Guru Sahib communicated in this Bani. Following that, we will engage with the Bani on a personal level in breakout rooms. And then we'll also discuss how did Guru Sahib communicate ideas throughout Sidh Gosti. And then finally, we will close out with a reflection. So to get us started, here's some baseline, basic information about Sidh Gosti. So as you may already know, Sidh Gosti is revealed by Guru Nanak Sahib. This Bani is on Angs 938 through 946 of the Guru Granth Sahib. It has 73 pauris. A pauri is kind of similar to a concept of like a stanza in English. In addition to these 73 pauris, there's also a rahau line. So, and rahau literally means like pause. So this one line kind of captures the central idea of the whole Bani. Sidh Gosti is in Rag Ramkali, which is one of the 31 rags or musical modes in which Gurbani has been revealed. This rag is said to evoke kind of a feeling of compassion that like calms tempers. It's believed in popular lore that yogis particularly liked this rag. It's an early morning rag that's generally sung in the first quarter of the morning, or what's called Bichol Rat, the time that comes after the previous night, as it's called popularly in Sikh tradition, which depending on the season or the time of sunrise roughly corresponds to 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. And also, something that's helpful to note is that the language of the Bani is typical Sadhukari, which is also sometimes referred to as Sant Bhasha. And it was a hybrid language based on the vernaculars, taking loan words from different cultures and religious traditions.
All right, thank you, Satprit. With that, we move on to the next slide. We briefly look at certain, internal dynamics that are, at play in the Bani. Although this has been briefly covered yesterday, I believe it is important to reiterate overall the context and frame of reference in which this Bani was revealed, as it helps to, it helps us to, better appreciate its flow and possibly learn why it's laid out the way it is. Well, since Sidh Gosti is in a conversation form, many people tend to get confused with it sometimes. Because of that, its flow is also a little complex, and there is no clear demarcation between questions of the Siddhs and the answers by Guru Nanak Sahib. They are quite intermingled because of the poetic of the Bani as well. Also, since the Bani is in a sort of a narrative form, it is clear that it is a reconstruction of the conversation between the Guru and the Siddhs in a revelation that is the Bani, or the Sidh Gosti. The scholars have no agreement on when the Bani was actually revealed, but it is safe to assume that it was revealed after the encounters, either in parts, after individual encounters, or as a whole later on. You will learn more about these historical encounters of the Guru with the Siddhs, their time and place in tomorrow's session, I believe. So based on what we have learned so far, the Bani of Sidh Gosti reconstructs the questions of the Siddhs and the answers by the Guru. The questions of the Siddhs, represent either the belief system of the yogic tradition, its doctrine, or sometimes even the common typical religious or spiritual perspectives held by adherents of religious traditions in general. And the Guru's response represents the Gurmat perspective that explains the way or the perspective of the Guru-oriented, in contrast to the other perspectives, worldly perspectives. So it is more important to be able to dissect the conversation in a way, that we are able to understand and reflect on the, lessons it imparts. So before we actually move on to the Bani itself, first we look at the etymology of the word yoga. Here it is, pertinent to note that the word yoga, which we are so used to hearing, as we know it, actually does not appear in Gurbani. Instead, its Punjabi derivative form, jog, which is with a jaja, j, is used at all places. The word yoga has its origin in Sanskrit from the word stem yuj, Y-U-J, which literally means union, joining, or attaching. And in modern times, this word has acquired many more connotations like connection, contact, application, or addition, as yoga has moved away from spiritual discipline to even exercise. So you'll hear many of these terms as well nowadays. But in the current context, yogic traditions have ascribed the word more to the controlling of the mind to achieve kevalya, that isolation or detachment from the material world, or union with the supreme spirit. But in the Sikh context, the word is used to denote a loving connection with a Kalpurk in order to become Kalpurk-like or divine-like. This point will become clearer as we delve deeper into the Bani later.
So in order to understand the message of this Bani, it's good to have a basic understanding of what yoga is and what its goal and belief system is. By understanding the yogic perspective that the Siddhs bring to the table, we can then better appreciate the Gurmat perspective Guru Sahib speaks to in this Bani. So like Surender Pal Virji just talked about, the word yog means union or joining of individual consciousness with the ultimate reality, or the achievement of a higher spiritual state or awareness. The origin of the yogic system specifically is debated, but it's generally believed to be from about 300 BCE, roughly. This is because of references that use the word yog that can be traced to certain texts between 200 to 500 BCE. The first proper text on which the modern day yoga system is based is the Yoga Sutra by Patanjali. He is the traditionally accepted founder who was a prominent leader of the school. However, there are others who believe the original teacher was Hiranyagarbha and that his system was further developed and coded by Patanjali. Next, we're going to look at the doctrine of yoga. So the main belief of yoga is that all actions and participation in the world leads to suffering and pain, and that this pain is caused by our interactions and relationships with our surroundings, including both other creatures as well as with the elements of nature around us. Therefore, in order to end this pain and suffering, yogic philosophy believes that we should disengage and withdraw from the world. So the goal of the yoga system is to purify the individual consciousness and take it to a higher level of awareness in order to achieve yoga. And this yoga is achieved when the individual consciousness, or Jiva Atma, is unified with Paramatma, the Supreme Being. Yogis believe that this purification occurs by controlling the mind and body in very specific ways. They also believe that this purification occurs by detaching from the world around us. Their goal is to achieve Kaivalya, which is essentially isolation from our surroundings. This state is also sometimes referred to as Samadhi, based on which school of thought you are coming from within the yogic tradition. Surender Pal, is there anything else you'd like to add here?
Sure, thanks, Satprit. I just would like to speak to the last part of what you just mentioned. The interesting system, whether it is theistic in nature or non-theistic. The Yoga Sutra of Patanjali uses the term Ishvara in one of its verses, particularly specifically verse 11. And the scholars have, debated on, who and what is this Ishvara. Some define this Ishvara as a personal God, while others see it as another facet of an, individual self. So when we look at Ishvara as a God, then the goal of yoga seems to be union with that supreme entity, which is Ishvara. But when this Ishvara is seen as, higher refined form of an individual self, then we will notice terms like Samadhi and Kaivalya used, more in the context of yoga. So with that, I'll move to the next slide, Satprit. Thank you. So, most people know and associate yoga with Hindu religious tradition, but many of us, may be wondering how and where it fits in the Hindu belief system. In this slide, we try to show, the position of yoga within the Hindu system. We first try to locate yoga among the classical Hindu systems, which are divided into, various schools of thought. The vernacular word traditionally used for these schools of thought is darshan, which literally means philosophy or perspective. Although in the current colloquial language, darshan has come to be used as simply seeing something or someone. For example, you might have heard, "Bade dina baad aaj tohade darshan hoye ne ji." I saw you after such a long time. That's how it is. We have started using it, but originally, technically speaking, darshan refers to ideology, its worldview and perspectives, things like value systems, principles, doctrines, and so on and so forth. So historically, the traditional Hindu schools of thought, or darshans, are divided into 6 major streams. You will often hear the phrase Khat Darshan when you read Bani, which means 6 schools of thought, where Khat means 6 and Darshan means schools of thought. So these 6 schools are listed right in front of you here. These are the main orthodox schools of philosophy, all of whom believe in the authority of Veds. Yoga system is one among these 6, which are listed on your left. And next to the name of the school are listed the names of those who started or developed these schools. For instance, yoga is believed to have been developed by Patanjali. Here it is important to bring to your notice term astik and Gnostic that are relevant to the current discussion. Nowadays, word Astic is often used for a person or ideology that believes in God, or Gnostic for those who do not believe in one. But originally, in its traditional sense, word Gnostic was actually meant belief in and submission to the authority of Vedas, and Gnostic the opposite of that. So as Sikhs, we would fall under the category of Gnostics, who do not actually believe in the authority of the Vedas. Even though over time, we might have come to believe that we are Astics. We might have thought that this term relates to a belief in a certain God, but that's not the case here. So the 6 schools of thought are clubbed as one group because of all of them being Astic, or in other words, they believe in the authority of the Vedas. As opposed to that, there are heterodox traditions or independent religious traditions parallel to it that do not actually accept the Vedic authority and hence are referred to as Gnostic. Here again, there are 2 major religious traditions of note that I'm sure you're aware of. One is Buddhism, started by Siddhartha Gautama, and the other one is Jainism by Mahavir. But there are other lesser known traditions or schools who also do not believe in the authority of Vedas, and hence they fall under this category, and they have been listed here for your benefit. With that, we'll move to the next slide. Okay, so next we'll try to understand the difference between term yogi, Sidh, and Nath. I'm sure you've covered yogi yesterday, so I'll briefly tell you the difference. And who did Guru Nanak Sahib have a dialogue with? Well, a yogi is a practitioner of yoga. So anyone who is a practitioner of yoga or a student of yoga is a yogi. Term yogi is sometimes also loosely used to refer to individuals who practice meditation or samadhi in certain other traditions, but it primarily refers to the practitioners of yoga. On the other hand, a Sidh is an accomplished yogi who has attained siddhis, supernatural powers through yogic practices. And the word Nath, literally meaning master, is actually a term reserved for the adherents of a specific denomination of yogis, which is called Nath Sampradaya, Nath denomination, which also happens to be one of the most popular yogic traditions. So if I have to explain that to you in simple terms, I would say that yogis are all the students of the school of yoga. Siddhs are basically graduate students of that school of yoga, and then Naths are graduates who have graduated in a specific stream, or subject from that school. So that's all different. The founder of Nath tradition is named Matsyendranath or Machindranath from early 10th century, and Nath system was further developed by one of his disciples, Gorakhnath, in the early 20th century. And the people who Guru Nanak Sahib had dialogue with were primarily from the Nath tradition. That's why we are today. With that, we finish the overview of who is yoga. With that, I pass.
So as we begin to discuss some of the major themes of Sidh Gosti, we want to begin by grounding ourselves in the Rahal line. So yesterday you engaged deeply with this line. So we would like for you to connect what you learned yesterday with what we will be discussing today. So we would like for you to please answer the following questions on a sticky note on slide 1 of the Jamboard. And the Jamboard link is now in the chat. So please click on the link, go to slide 1, please. And the questions that we'd like for you to think about are, what do you remember from the interpretation of the Rahal line that you did yesterday? And or, what is the main idea of the Rahal line of Sidh Gosti? If you could please head over to the Jamboard and on a sticky note, share some of your reflections from yesterday, that would be great. And it is totally okay if it's not a fully formed idea, even half ideas, we'll take them, or phrases, that's okay too. Just whatever you remember from yesterday, or how did you relate to the interpretations from yesterday? Just we want to kind of see, what do you remember and what stood out to you from yesterday about the Rahul line. Thank you all so much for sharing some of your reflections from yesterday. I'm seeing like a lot of themes coming up around truth and lots of other themes coming up too. But I'm going to turn it over to Surender Pal Singh.
Thank you. If you can bring up the slide on the hub. Yeah, thank you. So yesterday we delved into the central message of the Bani in detail. Let's quickly revisit it before we proceed to discuss the major themes covered in this Bani and its thesis, the thesis of the Bani. In the Rahul line, Guru Nanak Sahib is answering some fundamental questions regarding the common understanding of spirituality based on certain assumptions in society. In majority of the faith traditions, world over, people are looking for two main things, among so many others, of course. One is to, become pure, whatever one's understanding or motivation behind becoming pure maybe, whether to cleanse oneself of defects, shortcomings, or just to, exert a false sense of religious or spiritual superiority over others. And the second one is the human quest for liberation or deliverance, getting to some kind of heaven or a state of, peace, happiness, or pleasure. Some final goal that is, above and beyond this life, which gives us a sense of, purpose. So the Guru is basically, answering these two fundamental questions in the how, in the context of primarily yogic belief, but in general as well, and making it his thesis for the discussion with the Siddhs. So he says there is no point running away from your responsibilities or wandering around the world in search of purity and liberation. This is important since, Siddhs believe that engagement with the world is the root cause of all problems. Engagement is filth. So the Guru says that the way to become pure is to understand and identify truth in life, truth with a T capital, and then practice it to achieve freedom. But how do we really, get that understanding of truth? What is truth? How do we find it? And the only way, according to the Guru, to achieve this, bring this understanding in life is actually through the wisdom of the Shabad. So, and just so there is no ambiguity and the message is not misinterpreted, the word Shabad is actually qualified with an adjective, truth. Once I attain that wisdom, I become free right here and now. I am already liberated. I do not need to wait for an unseen heaven hereafter, to be free. So in the Sikh context, the idea of freedom is not limited to just the spiritual domain, but it also covers the entirety of life, spiritual, mental, emotional, political, social, financial, physical, and so on and so forth. I think with that, we'll move on to let's cover the major themes in Gurbani. So before we discuss today's themes, it is important to actually the major theme, the conclusion of the Bani that we're going to cover next. It is important to look at the overall frame of the Sidh Gosti and what it covers to better appreciate and understand today's session. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, every faith tradition is trying to answer certain fundamental questions of life. One major question among them is about removing suffering in the current life. We have already covered the yogic belief that engagement in worldly life is considered the cause of suffering. and renunciation is considered the source of eternal peace. In this context, the Guru's message is that engagement is not the cause of suffering, as you might believe. It's the indulgence in the worldly life, love of material world, developing that second love, forgetting your first love, as I mentioned in the hukam. That's the real problem. Indulging in the second love, the other love, duja bhav, looking for refuge at other places, looking for pleasure in tiny things of life that are only transient or short-lived in nature. And, and also the individual ego that leads to suffering. So, these are some things that the Guru mentions are the actual cause of suffering, not engagement. The other common questions, covered in Bani are, how to control desires and, expectations to attain contentment in life. What is the real idea of freedom and union, and how can one achieve that in life? How is wisdom attained, which may help find that freedom or union with the Kalpurukh that we're looking for? And the same question also appears in a figurative form, which is very commonly discussed within the Granth Sahib and outside in the other South Asian religious traditions as well. The symbolism of, the word ocean, where this word is seen as an ocean, and the pull of material objects in it are the giant waves that drown people in it. And of course, the question of how is, death or fear of death at least overcome amongst a host of other, philosophical questions that Sid's asked to probably sort of get an upper hand of the conversation. And the Guru informs the Sidh in response to all these questions that, that only through connection with and love of Nam, developing love of Nam, which is the creative facet, and one achieve freedom from suffering in life and achieve union with a Kalpurukh. So developing love for Nam is the only way to get rid of other loves and temptations in life. In absence of love for Nam, other worldly loves take root in heart. Duja bhav, visual. It doesn't really matter if I have renounced the word or I'm living an engaged life. If the ego has not been contained, the love of Nam does not develop. It does not sprout germinate in the heart. This is important to understand that one can be in the clutches of the love of the material world, even whilst they are sitting away from the world, in the wilderness. So something to remember. Other loves, which are the cause of suffering, will fade away once the individual has developed love for Nam, and that is how one escapes the giant waves of figurative giant waves of the temptation of this and fear of death. But the Guru informs that Nam can be found only through Shabad wisdom. There is no other source. Whoever submits to the Shabad and lives life as per the wisdom of the Shabad is blessed with the eternal bliss and is freed from all bondages and temptations of life. That is the real liberation or freedom from a Sikh perspective. And the individual who leads a wisdom-oriented life is called, which we'll cover tomorrow. We'd like to give you some instructions for an activity that is coming up, which Satprit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to give you some time and some space to actually engage with the Bani for yourselves. So for this part, you're going to be in breakout rooms with other participants, and your task is to translate and make meaning for yourselves of Pauri 72 of Sidh Gosti. And the reason that we're doing this is so that we can understand some of the big ideas that Guru Sahib communicated in this Bani. Welcome back, welcome back. Thank you all so much for engaging in this process. I get the privilege of getting to hear from different groups, but I would love for you all to share with each other some of the things that are standing out to you. So what we'd like at this time is recorders. If you could write down some of your group's reflections on Jamboard slide 2, that would be great. And reporters, if any of you would be willing to raise your hand and we can unmute you and share some of your reflections from the Shabad. Since we realized most groups did not get to the 4 reflection questions, that is totally okay. We actually changed the question to, what are you taking away from the Shabad? What did you learn? Like, you could share like a translation your group had. You could share how your group's making sense of it. Just report back, what are some things that you're taking away from this body so far and what you've translated so far. So recorders, if you could record some of your group's reflections on the Jamboard, that would be great. And reporters, if there are any of you that would be willing to share, we'd love to hear some of your thoughts. So if you could click the raise hand feature and then we can unmute you. Awesome, and we have Manat Kaur. Perfect, thank you for getting us started.
Yeah, so I think our biggest takeaway from this Shabad was just that Nam is kind of the path you have to be on, and that's the main way that you're going to attain mukti or liberation. And we talked a lot about how, like, what Nam actually means and how we could actually implement it in our life, because it feels like such an abstract concept at times, but yeah, we ultimately realized that if we want to reach the next avastha, that next stage in our Sikhi, we really need to just double down on Nam.
That was such a beautiful reflection. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Would another reporter be willing to share out what were some of your reflections from your groups? As we're waiting for someone else to share, I can also share some of the reflections on the Jamboard. So I'm seeing someone thinking about the word Urdu and what that means. I see someone wrote, have you considered or thought about the Guru's word/wisdom? O yogi, without the Guru's word, there is no yoga or union. So thinking about that translation for the first line, which is beautiful. Awesome. Wonderful, wonderful. Awesome. Kiran Kaur, thank you for raising your hand. And we'll go ahead and ask you to unmute.
Yeah, so I think in our group, we didn't quite finish, but one of the things that kind of kept coming back was this idea that, like, sometimes we get distracted from our, like, true Nam by other philosophies, what other people are doing, and it requires some self-reflection and perhaps some Sangat. We talked a little bit about the role of Sangat and maybe like listening to Kirtan with other people to achieve, as one way to achieve true Nam.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that reflection from your group. Awesome. Awesome. And I see, oh, and there's Singh. Go ahead.
Okay. We were quite taken aback by the characteristic of Guru Nanak being very brave. He's sitting here with people who are presumably experts in the art of yoga, and yet he's telling them, without this key element, yoga na hui. So whatever you are doing, you are considered the people with the magical power, the people who have attained a certain level, but you are not getting the true essence because Nam is missing. So he's emphasizing many times the importance of Nam, and yet being very, because he's so sure that the Nam, the revelation of truth, is what is really, really important. So it's being sure and being brave to say so.
Thank you so much for that reflection. And what's really interesting is that's actually the perfect segue into what we're going to start to think about in just a moment. So I'm glad that you brought up that part, because we'll touch on that a little bit in today's session as well. And the last thing I want to note is I see 2 more groups added some of their thoughts here. Through Nam, everything's revealed, awareness is achieved, and we achieve union through Nam. Excellent. You can do have to connect to Nam. That will give, excellent. So thank you all so much for engaging in this activity. Thank you for sharing on the Jamboard. Thank you for sharing out loud. This is great. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Surender Pal Singh.
Thank you, Satprit, for taking care of the activity. That was brilliant. Thank you for responses, everyone. So now we will delve, since we have covered stanza 72, I'll just go through our understanding of the stanza briefly. So after having lengthy discussion with the Sikhs on various aspects of life, including philosophical questions, in addition to real life concerns, the Guru finally closes the Bani with his conclusion in the penultimate last but one stanza of the Bani. This, I think, is the most important stanza after the Rahul line, if I may say so. In this, the Guru uses the word nibeda, the conclusion, the summary, the essence or the final judgment of the Shabad that is coming from the Shabad wisdom. So, the Guru says, Sabda ka nibeda, sunatu autu, binu nava joguna. Audu, O recluse, by the way, thank you for, mentioning the actual meaning of the word Audu. We recognize Audus as recluse or the yogis, but the actual meaning is someone who's actually content. So when Guru Sahib is, addressing the Sikhs, he is acknowledging their achievements as well. So in a way, he's saying, oh, the content being, oh, the one who has probably also attained kevalya, detachment from the world, and you have probably achieved what you wanted to. But the question is, have you also, while you achieved samadhi or kevalya, have you also achieved union, which was the purpose of of all levels you're engaged in? So the Guru says, well, let me tell you what is the final conclusion of the Shabad, the wisdom of the Shabad, that I think very important. And he says, listen to the conclusion of the Shabad. Just know that without Naam, union, yoga isn't possible at all. The point is that, without connecting with, without connecting with the essence of the creator or the creative force of the creator, how can you expect to have a union with the same creator while engaging in just, ritualistic practices or postures which are devoid of love for now? So even while, you have moved away from the word and broken all links from it, you are still bound by fixations to ritualistic practices. There's no love or submission to Naam, and hence no possibility of yoga. So the only way to achieve that is actually take it to the next level, which is develop love and connection with Naam, in addition to, detaching yourself from the other loves, which the yogis have probably done through Kevalya and Samadhi. So that's a pretty interesting way of, giving a conclusion of the Shabad wisdom. Next, Guru Sahib says, Name rate, anden mate, name te sukh hoi. Sukh, happiness, which the entire word is after, and which still alludes the entire word. That is because everyone is still stuck in the otherworldly love. Once the individual has, developed love for Naam, bliss follows. And what is the sign of love? Well, you mate, the word mate is key here. Well, you stay engaged or absorbed day and night, andin rate, in what you love. So that is simple logic. You keep doing what you love or like. So if I claim I am in love with a Naam, I will stay engaged, with the day and night. And if one's bliss arises in the person. So that's what the second line is telling us. The next line is an argument that explains why we need to stay engaged in Naam. Naame hite sabu pargatu hove, Naame sochi pai. In the Sikh tradition, most of the time, Naam is simply explained as, name of Akal Purkh. Naam is actually the creative and the active facet of Akal Purkh. that is manifesting in everything all the time. Nam is actively creating and taking care of the creation at all the times. It is not a concept, as one of the participants just mentioned, or idea to focus one's mind on in a abstract way. It's the creative facet of Akal Purkha, that we need to feel, experience, and identify with in life. The Guru says, everything originates from Nam. Name hite sab pragat hoye. Everything originates, arises from Nam. And the awareness of this fact is also received. And the source of awareness of learning this fact or realizing this fact is also Nam itself. There is no other source. Name soji pai. This soji is also received through connection with the Nam. Bin naam ek karahe bahutere sacha aap hi khoi. And what happens when there is no realization of Nam? Can't say if the Guru is actually, indirectly pointing to the Sikhs, but it definitely applies to them as well as most of us. Example of this we'll cover later in the presentation. The line says that, bahutere, many folks, bahutere ek kare, in the garb of, religiosity or religious acts, as if they know, but they do not realize that that it's their ignorance that is leading them to pretend, and the root cause of that is the absence of Nam in the consciousness and otherworldly love. So in this ignorance, they are led astray by Akal Purkha. They are khoi. So when someone is broken away or is not in connection with Nam, they indulge in other love, otherworldly pleasures and activities. So Sadgurte Naam Paye Audu Jog Jugtita Hui. And the second last line, Guru Sahib informs us where to find that. So precious, so important. The Guru then closes the stanza saying that Naam can only be received through the eternal wisdom, Guru wisdom. Know this as a fact in your heart. Know that you cannot find or experience Naam, without the eternal wisdom of the divine. Only, after receiving Naam, will you learn the true way to union, the Jugti way of. Har vichar man dekho Nanak bin nawa mukta na hui. In deep conviction, that the Guru addresses the Sikhs and says, what? Reflect on this fact in your mind and realize it for yourself, that there is no liberation, no emancipation, no freedom possible without inviting Naam in life and making it the basis of all our endeavors. And this is, I think, the cover. Next we'll cover Satprit. Can you take care of that?
Yes, absolutely. So in this session so far, we've talked about some of the big ideas and major themes of Sidh Gosti. So at this time, we're going to transition into thinking about how Guru Sahib communicated these ideas. So one thing that stands out to me while looking at the Bani of Sidh Gosti is how you can see evidence of dialogue between Guru Sahib and the Siddhs. So there's this open exchange of ideas back and forth between the two sides, even though there are huge differences in their lifestyles and what they perceive is the best way to achieve the goal of yoga. So we've picked 40s 2 and 3 as an example to illustrate the ways that Guru Sahib engaged in dialogue. It's important to remember that Guru Sahib is having a discussion with experts in the field of yoga. So there's a lot at stake for the Siddhs. The Siddhs feel like they are very knowledgeable, which causes them to sound sarcastic at some places. You can even see in some places of the Bani, the Siddhs making unsuccessful attempts to win over Guru Sahib to their side. So eventually, even though the position of the Siddhs may not have shifted by the end, both sides are still able to have a meaningful exchange of ideas about their differing belief system. And this stands out to me personally because I think it can sometimes be really challenging for many of us, including myself, to engage in dialogue with people that we strongly disagree with. I know I personally can become extremely opinionated and kind of on edge when I'm discussing a topic that's really important to me and that I have a really strong stance on, almost to the point where it becomes challenging to listen to the ideas that someone else is bringing to the table. But looking at Guru Sahib's example is pretty inspirational for me because Guru Sahib stays centered on his stance, stays grounded, and is still able to have a meaningful conversation, which is kind of cool. Another thing that strikes me is that even though the Sidh's questions were pretty mundane in the beginning, for example, like, who are you? Where are you from? What path do you follow? Guru Sahib treats these questions seriously and responds really thoughtfully, which you can see that in the second set of questions as well. I think it's important to note that by giving thoughtful responses, we can see the conversation gets elevated to a higher level. And we will see in later sessions that Guru Sahib openly answers their questions, like any questions, openly answers them. Sometimes it might not be in the way the Sidhs expect, but Guru Sahib remains engaged in the conversation, respectful, and focused on his goal of moving the dialogue from a debate more into a discussion of how we can really achieve yog or union with Ik Onkar.
With that, we'll move on to the next aspect of how Guru Sahib communicated their ideas. We'll briefly cover the tone, the humility, the firmness. Still, there's a firmness in his message and the clarity that is there in the wisdom. So, and the continuation of what Satprit just mentioned. Let's have a look at it. We're taking the same examples of 42 and 3 again, as it becomes easier, to relate to the same text. So as you noticed in the previous slide, the Sidhs start off by asking Guru Sahib, really basic questions, and the Guru responds to these really basic questions with deeper answers. The Guru says, my prayer is speaking truth, and I am humbled by the saints. Then the Sikhs are like, kind of like, this guy wants to sort of, I think, get deeper. Okay. Then they're like, okay, then let's see, what you've got. Literally, and they use the word parle, oh boy. So to be fair, Guru Sahib was a lot younger than these Sikhs, but there also seems to be an air of condescension that accompanies this set of questions. However, Guru remains grounded and centered on his message and the source from which he draws all inspiration and purpose. He goes on to show the humility and clarity in the wisdom he has. Guru does not respond to the question, but in a way, Guru molds the discussion towards the actual source that is driving and defining the Guru's agenda, which is Akal Purkh or Ik Onkar. So in a way, the Guru is saying it's immaterial where I'm coming from and where I'm going. What is important is the will of Ik Onkar, Akal Purkh, under which everything is happening, including my coming here and having a dialogue with you. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. There are a few more examples of what we just mentioned. So another example of clarity in response of the Guru can be found in the following stanza 4, and some of that in stanza 18 as well. So in stanza 4, the Sikhs ask the Guru the most oft asked question, the word ocean, the symbolism that we just covered a few slides away. The word ocean is said to be, impossible. How can one cross over? Now, while they describe the word ocean as impassable, at the same time, they are asking how can one cross it? So this question also seems to be based on the understanding of the Sikhs that, whoever engages in the word will surely, drown in it, and hence it is impassable. So according to them, the only solution is, withdrawal from. So there is already an answer within the question. So you will notice that even while the Guru showed humility, whenever there is, a sign of contradictions or any hint of, craftiness in the questions of the Sikhs, the Guru did not shy away from, calling it out. He says, what answer can be offered to someone who asks and knows at the same time? I speak the truth. You have crossed over. The idea that we covered the meaning of Audu. You are the ones who have already achieved Kevalya. You have achieved detachment. how can I really argue with you when you also know the answer to the question that you're posing? So another set of questions that I find very interesting from this perspective is in stanza 17 and its response in 18. The Siddhs ask, why have you, given up and worn this, dress or recluse? What merchandise do you deal in? How shall you carry across your associates that you associate with? And in utmost humility and in clarity, the Guru's response that he has left home to find Guru-oriented people. Sort of an allusion to creating a sangat or a community of like-minded people who are Guru or wisdom-oriented. And if you, the Siddhs, are open to becoming Guru-oriented, you should very well be my fellow travelers on this journey. So that's how I read this part. Next, we'll quickly look at the language used by the Guru to communicate his ideas to the. So, this particular aspect of Guru's approach always fascinates me. And I always talk about this thing in any class that I am in, but I'll speak to it after we have covered the example. So at one point, the Siddhs tried to, persuade the Guru to adopt their lifestyle and, become like them. They say, wear the dress of yoga system. Do that so that you are also considered Yogendra, the supreme Indra of the yoga, the supreme yogi, topmost yogi, whose signs are, and then they explain to the Guru, how does a yogi look like? A Yogendra whose sign is an earring, and who has a begging pouch, and who wears patched coat. Among 6 thought systems of Hindu, yoga is one, and in 12 schools of yoga, serve ours, which is supposedly the best. Following it, tame your mind, oh man, you shall never suffer beating again. Now the Guru gives us a response in a very interesting way. So let's check that out. So the response to that is on the next slide. Okay, so the Guru at no point says that, this way is different from yoga, or his way is different from yoga, or that, he does not subscribe to the yogic understanding of the word, even though the Guru actually didn't subscribe to the yogic understanding of the word. But the Guru explicitly does not say that. So that's very interesting. So let's see, how does Guru communicate his idea then? One unique style is pervasive in the Guru Granth Sahib. The Guru does not take away the other party's right to believe in what they do. The Guru simply redefines the terms and the language to inform people's perspectives. Since the Guru is more concerned about actually changing behaviors and lifestyle rather than just the outer appearance or labels. So what is the point of changing your outer appearance? If certain practices, if the person actually doesn't change from within. So the Guru's real focus is to change the core of a person. Is the life. That is what the Guru tries to fix here as well. Without directly saying no, he doesn't say no. What he does is he uses the vocabulary of the Siddhs to inform them of his understanding of the purpose of life in his way, which is the good move. So what does he say? He says, Nanak says the Guru-oriented understands the way of yoga is attained thus. It is, with Shabad constantly residing within, killing ego and possessiveness is my earring. My earring is, look at the creativity here. It doesn't say I do not wear earrings. He says, this is my earring. I do exactly what you're doing, but slightly different. So that's the creative style of sending a message. I have given up lust, anger, and pride through the realization obtained from the Guru's Shabad. Realization of the divine presence everywhere is my quilt. The realization that the divine is everywhere, which also was mentioned in the Hukam today, is my quilt, the patched coat and the pouch. Nanak, only the love of divine takes on across. Source appearance does not, the appearance doesn't really help. through the Guru's instruction, realize the true greatness of the true master. Begging bowl turned upside down, the essence of 5 elements is the cap, disciplined body, the mat, and restrained mind, the loincloth. Truth, contentment, and self-restraint are in my company, Nanak. Thus, Guru-oriented individuals remember Naam and become free in this world, and at the same time achieve you. So instead of saying no, Guru constructively molded the conversation and made it action and behavior oriented.
And there are some really great thoughts that folks recorded on the Jamboard. So thinking about respectful engagement without intending to harm, humility, and making sure the conversation is accessible, using vocabulary of the Sidhs for easier understanding, like their frame of reference, disarming the Sidhs by acknowledging their authority, good strategy, confident and humble, respectful, coming in with an attitude of sharing what Nanak knows, staying grounded, not getting provoked, subtle and logical, respectful, polite, doesn't get angry or defensive, but says like, this is the equivalent of what I've done, or have you considered blank, 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 not putting them down. Great, I love these. Thank you so much for your reflections. And hopefully it's cool to see what other groups are also talking about in their breakout rooms as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Surender Pal Singh.
Thank you, Satprit. So we'll get moving towards the conclusion of the presentation. I'll share my final thoughts on today's session. So let's quickly revisit it. So first thing, if I ever want to walk on a spiritual path or wish to, develop a relationship with the divine, first thing to remember is that, mere symbolism and, ritual practices without developing love and devotion to a Kalpurk is a useless activity, and it won't take me anywhere. Secondly, individual ego is the cause of separation, this sense of separate identity from a Kalpurk, even while one is close to the Kalpurk, as Hukum reminded us. And even within a Kalpurk, since our entire creation is a Kalpurk, we can still be separated from a Kalpurk by the sense of ego. So to alleviate pain, one needs to, tame ego. And how is the ego tamed? By, connecting with Naam. Which is the source of all creation. Because if we do not connect to Naam, we'll continue to wander. The question that is raised in the house line, and we'll continue to wander under the influence of ego, especially mentally and spiritually. And how can Naam be found? Well, the Naam can only be found through with wisdom. That's what the Guru informs us. Once the individual submits to the wisdom of Shabad and also lives by it, the individual is liberated from the bondages of life, whatever those bondages are, not just spiritual and mental, but physical, political, social, economic, and all those. And then that person is able to achieve union for self, and also able to make that for the fellow travelers with them within their Sangata. So that's what I believe is the idea of heaven, if there is one, or the idea of union within the.
With that, we want to give you, first of all, we want to thank you all so much for your engagement today and for joining us today. We want to give you one final opportunity to reflect on everything that you've learned today. So thinking about the whole session, so some of the major themes, 4072, how Gurus have communicated ideas. So thinking about everything that we've talked about today, we'd like for you to reflect on the session and think about the following 2 questions. And we would like for you to record your individual reflections. This is going to be an individual activity on slide 4 of the Jamboard. So for your individual reflections, we'd like for you to think about what have you learned today, and or what are you taking away from today's workshop? Like what's one thing that's sticking with you as you leave today's workshop? So I'm going to allow folks some time to do that. As you all are doing that, we're also going to start our Q&A. So we'd love for you to take a second, think about your reflections, and we'll also start Q&A at the same time. Okay, so the first question that we have is, how does Odu differ from Sadhu? Are they related or are they completely different? I just noticed that the words sound similar.
Sadhu, I think, is a more generic word used in the spiritual word blanketly, which also means a recluse or a mendicant or someone who has broken away from the word. Because I think Adhu is more specifically used for, this is the only place I'm hearing this, the yogic tradition, specifically the Naths. Even though technically they mean the same thing as you've just learned today.
Perfect, thank you. And then our next question is, can you explain the different ways in which Nam is spelt / applied in each Pankti under the same Pauri? Is there a difference at all? Perhaps a quick explanation on the rules of grammar.
In the same Pauri, by that I suppose they mean Pauri 72. Can you quickly pull that out?
And here we go.
Okay, so when Naam hai. So here Naam hai. So another multiple ways Naam is written in Granth Sahib. One is Naam Mama with an onkad. Then you find Naam Mama with a La and a Dula, as in this case. Here the form has changed slightly. So Now also appears, Naam also appears, Nav also appears. So here you notice Nav. Here Nav appears as instrumental, basically is saying without Naam, without the help of Naam, or through Naam, only through Naam, or without Naam, job does not happen. Naame Rate. Naame Rate, the second Naam is more locative in case, which is if or when one is absorbed in a Naam, that's when Sukh arises, happiness arises. Naame Hi, again, Naame Hi is more locative here, from Naam, or maybe dative. Naame Hi Te Sab Pargota. Everything originates from Naam. So that's how these ending vowels change the grammatical case, or the grammatical case decides the ending vowels. Bin Naam, without Naam. Here Naam seems to be an accusative case, the object of the sentence. Because the subject would be the one who is trying to obtain or receive. So there are some of the different ways Naam has been used. Again, I think the last one is same as the first one. Without Naam, without the help of Naam, mukti or the freedom or emancipation doesn't.
Perfect. Thank you, Virji. And then another question we had was, in our group, we were exploring the difference between Shabad, Waheguru, and Naam. Could you please explain your perspective?
That is actually a pretty tricky question, because I don't know if I know the answer. I can only, sorry, was there was, hello? Okay, sure, that's fine. Okay, so I don't know if I'll be able to answer that, or if I know the answer to that. If people ask me, I have developed my own understanding for this. So the way I look at it is, there's unity in this creation. Waheguru or Akal Purkh is manifesting in so many different ways, but at the end of the day, it's essentially Akal Purkh. So Naam of Waheguru or Akal Purkh or Ek Onkar is the, if I have to explain that, is the active. Naam is also Akal Purkh, but it's one of the facets of Akal Purkh. Naam is the creative or active facet that is creating and taking care of the entire. Naam is Akal Purkh as well. That's one facet of Akal Purkh that is visible to, that we can experience in the manifest form of Akal Purkh. There's also unmanifest, transcendent form of, if you want to go into the technicality of it, of Akal Purkh. which we cannot perceive or know or understand with our understanding. So that's what I think is the difference between Shabad and Vaheguru and Naam. And Shabad, as I just mentioned, Shabad is divine wisdom manifesting as word. And again, still is divine, which is, Jedi line and Pankaj Pothi Parmeswar ka Atman. It sort of, alludes to that. All these words are they are basically ways to explain the human mind, different facets of the same thing, which is Akal, if I may say so.
With that was our final question. So Surender Pal Guruji, I'll turn it over to you for any final thoughts that you'd like to share.
Thank you. Sure. I'll just take 30 seconds and I'll finish it. I think I'll be repeating myself if I speak too much here. So I would say, remember that, engagement, as the yoga system tells us, engagement is not the cause of suffering. It is the indulgence. It is, you can still be indulgent, or you can still be in other love while sitting in a wilderness or jungles or forests. So more than actually going out and, breaking away from the world, what is more important is to actually develop love for the one Naam. So once you have, developed that love, we have already discussed its criteria, because whenever we are in love with something, that is the only thing we would like to do all the time. That's how we know that whether we are in love with Naam or not. So once we develop that love, that constant connection, where it's probably sort of an obsession where we do not want to do anything else, that's the love I'm talking about. That's when the otherworldly loves vanish and our sufferings go away, because the source of our suffering is our indulgence in material things, thinking them to be separate from the ultimate reality or Akal, everything exists. So to find eternal peace and bliss and to achieve freedom in life, praise Naam, submit to Shabad's wisdom, sing it, and then implement, learn, reflect on it, and then implement that. If that's what I think is the message and the crux of. With that, we'll finish the session. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa. Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
And once again, thank you all so much for being here. Okay, and thank you. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.